Welcome to Next to Madison, a podcast to help you live your best life.
Hey, welcome back to another episode of Next to Madison. I'm very excited for this episode. We are talking about travel. The world is opening up again, and so we're going to be doing more episodes about great destinations so you can learn more about them, get inspired to book your next vacation, and go see the world. Because if there's one thing we really learned about COVID, when all our things were kind of things that we took for granted were taken away from us, it's that experiences and family and friends are the most important things. Not necessarily the car we drive or the home we live in, but really the places we go. Those are the memories we can take with us and not the things. So we're going to be doing some more travel episodes so you guys can get excited, get inspired, and all that good stuff. So my guest on Next to Madison today, he is a philanthropist. He is a safari outfitter, a conservativist, and he is going to be talking to us about the amazing continent of Africa. So with that being said, I'm going to bring on my guest today. I'd like to welcome Malcolm Ainscough. How are you?
Hey, Madison. Greetings from Victoria Falls in Zimbabwe. And it's evening here, so full disclosure, I'm sipping on a little gin and tonic. I'm sure you're on coffee.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, he's on booze. I'm on coffee. That's what happens when you're dealing with vast time zones, right? You get one that's having fun and one that's still in the work zone. But hopefully when you're sleeping, I'll be partying.
Absolutely. Quite right. I see your surname is spelt the same as my maternal grandmother's fourth husband. She was married to Colonel James Malloy.
And she was quite...
I beg your pardon?
I said fourth husband. She didn't want to stop after the third?
She was quite a girl, and she passed away in 1970. So she was quite a girl before there were such girls. But lady, French Huguenot extraction. So my middle name is Martel, and my mother's ancestors were French Huguenots who escaped Catholic persecution from France in the 1660s.
Wow.
And some of them settled in Massachusetts, and some of them settled in the Cape in South Africa, and they were accepted because they were winemakers. So that's my maternal ancestry, which is quite fascinating.
That is fascinating. And so did you grow up in Africa?
So my father fought, he was British, my mother was South African, and my father fought in the Second World War in Egypt, and his best friend became his father-in-law because my father was a little older than my mom. And at the end of the Second World War, it was very difficult for British servicemen to get back to England from Egypt. And so my grandfather said to my dad, why don't you hop a ship with me and come home to South Africa for a few months before you go home to England? My dad's parents weren't excited about this because he was an only child and they hadn't seen him for 3 years.
Yeah.
And he down the Suez Canal, down the east coast of Africa, got off the ship in what was then Lorenzo Marques in Mozambique, and took a train to Johannesburg, walked into the living room of my grandparents' home, and I asked my mother many years later, why did you marry Dad so quickly? They were married in 6 weeks. And she said to me, he walked into the living room wearing his captain's uniform, and I thought to myself, I'll have that one. And they married in 6 weeks. So my poor grandparents in the UK had not only their son who came home, but his brand new wife.
Yeah.
My dad couldn't settle back in England after being in Africa. He was so enchanted with the sunshine and the people. My mother was a ballet dancer, so she was in heaven being in London. She thought this was just the best thing. But my dad put his foot down and said, we're going back to Africa. So they arrived back in South Africa in 1948. He couldn't find work. They hopped a train going to Kenya to find their fortune. And he was offered a job between Johannesburg and Bulawayo, which is the second city of Zimbabwe. and took the job on the train, got off in Bulawayo, and we've all been in Zimbabwe ever since.
That is great. So you got into, we're talking about like the travel. So how did you really get into running safaris, which is the main thing that people go to Africa to do, is to see these amazing animals in their habitats?
Right, Madison. So I was very much a city boy in the first part of my life. And I worked for British Airways, and I lived in London for part of the time. And then I met my wonderful partner, who is a game ranger, and he introduced me to the wonders of the wilds and the magic and the mystique of safari and animals and Africa's spectacles. And I basically threw up my day job, and we decided in the early 90s to form a company, and we would bring people to Africa on safari. I identified a niche in the market for the ultra high end of people who wanted to travel on safari in great style and great comfort and be well taken care of, in the days when that really wasn't how things were. It was much more basic in those times. And so we kind of had this concept that grew from small seeds into something that's become very exciting. And I feel that I'm so blessed to be able to do what I want to do where I'm doing it.
Absolutely.
It's a unique gift.
It's just amazing, and to be able to kind of work with wild animals that are just such beautiful, amazing creatures, and to kind of learn about them. So how do you, with your safaris, my first question is, how do you keep the guests safe should an animal, go on its natural instinct to danger attack?
So, Madison, that's a great, it's a great question. And one of the most alluring, enticing components of a safari is that we're all slightly out of our comfort zone. And that includes those of us who are privileged to call Africa home. I'm talking to you from my home in the Victoria Falls National Park. We have leopard calling around the house. I was woken by a lion roaring early this morning.
Wow.
We Cape buffalo drinking from our waterhole yesterday evening. Elephants on the way home today from town. And the answer is that you have to respect their space. And I always say that we are guests in their kingdom. This is their country. This is not ours. And you just need to be as respectful as I would be if I was visiting you in your home. Give them space, don't aggravate them, don't be pushy, don't do things you shouldn't do. It's all pretty common sense. But of course, one travels today with true professionals, people who have spent years honing their skills, and it's second nature to them to work with you or your family or your colleagues, whoever you might be traveling with, to ensure that you extract the maximum experience whilst feeling a little out of your comfort zone. It's a great thing because it brings people together. It's fabulous for families. You can see the family, off the technology, off the television, away from the telephone, and all bonding around a campfire at night because they're all slightly out of their comfort zone. And it's really a very special thing.
Yeah, absolutely. So have you had any animals that have come close, and how do you handle that?
Yes, we have. Animals will always give you a warning, Madison. So they don't generally, it's rare for an animal just to attack. He's going to, if it's a lion, he's going to flick his tail. You'll see that he's aggravated. If it's an elephant, the first sign is the head goes up. The second sign is the ears come out to make himself look big. And then if you still keep pushing, the third sign is the head goes down and he's coming for you. So you know that by sign number one, when that head comes up, we just back up a little, or we give the animal some space until he becomes comfortable with us. But, you know, in a lot of the lodges or the camps that we visit today, these animals are habituated to the vehicles. So they see the vehicle as this green form that drives around. It never threatens. It never competes for food. It never tries to take their young away. It's just this being that respects. And so they have become accustomed, and they are very happy to share their environment with you. You don't want to stand up in the vehicle. You know, that's the first thing that anyone's going to teach you. When you're sitting in my vehicle, if it's an open Land Rover, you must remain seated, because the animals see the form, they don't see the human. And the minute you stand up, you become a human. And sadly, man is the super predator. So that is what makes animals super anxious. And you don't want that to happen. They're either going to do one of two things. They're either going to come for you, or they're going to run away. And, you know, if either of those happen, it's not a good thing.
Right. No, that makes sense. So have you ever had an animal that charged the vehicle?
Yes, we did. I was in Botswana once, and it was what we call a rogue elephant. And it had been injured in a fight, and it had a bad wound on its back. And it was obviously in a great deal of pain. And it just got very aggravated with us. And we had no chance to pull back or to do anything. It just came for us. But, when it gets close to the vehicle, it realizes the size of the vehicle and that it doesn't really want to take this on. And so it came for us, and then it turned around at the last minute and ran away. And that, of course, is another rule that you'll learn pretty quickly when you're on safari. Never run. So an animal charges you. The one thing you don't want to do, which every single sense is screaming at you, is to run.
Yeah, absolutely.
Exactly. Every human instinct is screaming at you, flee, flee. But it's actually the last thing that you want to do. You want to stand your ground. And one of our guides, Greg Hughes, is regarded as one of the top 10 guides in Africa. He's credited with saving the life of the editor of Africa Geographic in the UK, who they had an elephant encounter. And Greg ensured that the family stood their ground. They were on a walking safari. And they didn't run. And Graham Boynton wrote very kindly about how Greg had actually saved his family's life. But, these are stories. And when it comes to the magic, mystery, and symbolism of Africa, we've all got stories. And that's what we want to talk about and what people want to hear. What we don't talk about, it's like aviation. Statistically, it's the safest form of transport.
Yeah.
Literally hundreds of thousands of people who come every year to Africa on safari. I've had families who've traveled with us 20 times, and they've never had even a remote incident, not even anything uncomfortable that's happened. It's very rare that you have these hair-raising, life-altering moments. It's rare.
Yeah, well, that's good. And what animal is the most social on the safaris that seems to come out the most and want to be engaged?
That is a wonderful question, Madison. So I'm going to talk to you for a moment about the big five, which is the 5 most dangerous animals to hunt. So that is from times when the world was a different place and people came on safari to shoot animals, and those were the trophies they took home. It was before photography, and it was a different era and a different time. And, unfortunately, incalculable damage was done in that era when, so many magnificent animals, particularly the big tusker elephants, were shot out, during that era. So you actually find, it's quite difficult now to find these big tuskers because genetically they've been made extinct. The 5 most dangerous animals to hunt are lion, leopard, elephant, Cape buffalo, and rhino. And paradoxically, those animals are all perhaps reasonably social. Mm-hmm. Animals are wild. I'm guilty of domesticizing my dogs, who I adore. But essentially, animals are animals. Humans are humans. And you talk about, a social wild animal as a sort of oxymoron in itself. The animals are wild and people are not. But socially within themselves and within their own herd instinct or animal grouping, elephant are amazing. They have a tremendous memory. They have social bond. They're very protective towards their young. The breeding herds take turns in nursing and looking after their young, and they're super social. I was reading an article yesterday about some latest research indicates that giraffes hum to each other during the night. And I was fascinated with this article, that giraffes have this form of communication during the night, and they actually hum to each other. There's nothing more beautiful than a herd of impala, which is perhaps the most common antelope species in Africa, but so successful that it's hardly evolved in 3 million years. It's such a successful animal, and reproduces in great numbers. And they always remind me of a corps de ballet. And I was talking to you about my mother, but impala are always lean and attractive and well-groomed and energetic and move around in great numbers. And if they're threatened, they perform these amazing pronks and jumps and leaps as if to say to the predator, catch me if you can, good luck. That's social behavior to the next level, because it's at every point. It's impressive, it's caring, it's protective, it's just extraordinary.
Yeah, I've never been on a safari, and when I go, I'm going to go on your safari. But what is the best?
Well, you're very kind.
Yeah, what is the best way to plan and book a trip to Africa?
So, Madison, it's interesting. When we lurched into this COVID, what I call the Great Pause, which incidentally has not been altogether bad for the wildlife in Africa. It's been horrendous for the people.
Yeah.
Absolutely ghastly. But for the wildlife, it hasn't been all bad, this Great Pause. When we went into it, I was of the opinion, and I've lost my train of thought. Just remind me of your question.
The best way, because I want to go to Africa. It's on my bucket list. I want to do a safari. So what is the best way to plan a trip there?
Apologies. I went off at a tangent and lost myself.
No way about it.
When we went into this Great Pause, one of the first things that I came out with and spoke to our colleagues in the industry, competitors, my database, was my belief that post-COVID, there will be an even greater swing to travel professionals. So many, and whether it's safari or cruising or, going to Paris or London or whatever it might be, we're all, as humans, terribly social. and we like to talk to each other, and
Yeah.
more important, when things go wrong, we want to pick up the telephone or some form of communication and speak to a real person and say, I've got a problem, things have changed, and I can't travel, or I have to change my travel arrangements, or whatever the case may be. And I think the world was moving in certain areas to a more direct approach, so what we call a sort of A to B functionality. So you might get on your laptop and type luxury Africa safari and see what comes up, and you might like a website, and then start doing your research and take it from there. I think post the Great Pause, you're much more likely to get on a Zoom call to someone like me and say, I want to come to Africa. Lynn Dallas, your producer, traveled with me, and she might say this, and you should get hold of Malcolm. He's fun to work with. He knows what he's talking about, and when things go wrong, he's not going to abandon you. And I just think there's many of us in the industry. I'm one of many, and I just think if you cut that person out of the planning process, which incidentally is half the fun.
Yeah.
You actually shortchanging yourself. And all of us in the industry work on a commission. So, it's going to be the same if you book with whoever the operator is, or if you book with me, because the operator's incentivizing me to sell to you. They're certainly not going to undercut me when I give them a great deal of business, if you went directly to them.
Right.
So it doesn't cost you anything to deal with a professional who is going to be fun to talk to, who has been to all these places. If they're on the ground in Africa, they have the relationships, they know the people, they know the guides, they know the housekeepers, they know everybody. And they're going to ensure that you have the best experience. And it's a bit like going to India or China or Turkey. I mean, I wouldn't dream of doing it without a guide or without someone to walk me through it.
Well, right, because you don't know exactly what to see or how to best use your short amount of time that you're there to kind of see everything. And at least the guide can tell you, okay, this is what you need to see. And so that leads me to what's hot in Africa? What's like the hottest thing that people have to do if they're going to travel there?
So there are different parts of Africa. You can fit North America, Western Europe, India, and New Zealand into Africa with to Cairo's 10 hours. Go to Mogadishu in East Africa, at its greatest point is 10 hours.
Okay.
It's a vast continent, and obviously there are parts of Africa that are good at certain times, and there are parts that are bad at certain times. So, I mean, just to generalize to some extent, if you're traveling to Southern Africa, Central Southern Africa, so South Africa, Zimbabwe, Botswana, Namibia, Zambia, it's say April to October.
Okay.
And why do I say April to October? Well, we have summer rains, December through March. So your winter, our summer, is not the time that you really want to safari, because the bush is thick, the bugs are out, it's wet, it's muddy, it's humid, it's hot. The animals are difficult to see because the bush is thick. But as soon as the rains go in March and it's dry from April to November, then it's magical, because you've got dry days, you've got no bugs, you've got no rain, you've got no humidity. The temperature's like perfect. It's 40s to 50 at night. It's like 70 to 80 in the day.
Wow.
And it's just absolutely, the premium time to be here.
Okay.
Africa is slightly different because East Africa has what we call short rains in November, December, and then it dries up for January, February, and then we get long rains March, April, May. So you definitely don't want to be in East Africa March, April, May. But you can go in summer, your winter. So if somebody says to me, I can only travel in February, I would say, don't think of Southern Africa, go to East Africa. If someone said, excuse me, I can only travel in April or May, I would say, don't think of East Africa, you must go to Southern Africa.
Okay, gotcha.
And then as the rains disappear, so I've got people who say to me, I like it when it's green and pretty, but I don't want rain. So then I would say to you, come to Zimbabwe, Botswana, South Africa, April, May, when it hasn't yet dried out because the rains ended in March. It's still green and pretty, but it's not wet. There's no humidity, there's no bugs, and the animals are easier to see. Victoria Falls are in flood. So, one of the 7 natural wonders of the world is looking its most majestic. And then as it dries out, continues to dry out. So, we then go into June, July, August, September. By August, September, the animals are congregating in large numbers around whatever the remaining water sources are. So you then want to focus on camps where there's water and where the animals are going to be congregating to the river or to whatever water sources remain available. And then October is probably your prime month because that is the driest month when the animals are really searching for the water, but it gets a little hot for my taste. So, in October, the temperature's in the 90s during the day and sort of 70s at night. And it's somewhat brutal. You really need, if you're at a certain point in your life, you need air conditioning because it's just too hot come October. But if you're a professional wildlife photographer and you want the very best month, I would say to you October.
Okay, so October is when you're going to see the majority of the animals on safari.
In their biggest numbers, Madison, that's when they're congregating around the available water sources. But let's just digress for a moment to the greatest wildlife show on earth, which is the migration. And that is the circular movement of between 1.5 and 2 million animals between Kenya's Masai Mara and Tanzania's Serengeti. So it's a age-old instinct in these animals. They follow the rains and they follow the water. And to see the Great Migration is one of the most spectacular sights you'll ever witness in your life. That's a real bucket list dream item. And you're going to move between Tanzania and Kenya depending on when you want to travel. So northern Serengeti, northwestern Serengeti, June, July, August. Then traditionally the migration crosses the Mara River into Kenya at the end of August. And that's when you get those gripping photographs and videos of these poor animals crossing the river and running the gauntlet of the crocodiles that are lying. That's people come time and time again in attempt of getting their timing perfect, enabling them to witness this, what we call the crossing, which is absolutely thrilling. And then they sort of hang around in the Masai Mara in Kenya for a couple of months, 3 months or so. And then as the rains come back, they start to move south back into the Serengeti. And so people say, when is the migration? Well, the migration is all the time. You just have to put yourself in the right place. And if you really want to see the migration what you're looking for is ideally a mobile tented camp. So that's one of those fabulous experiences where you're tented. So you go to bed at night and you can hear the lions roaring like they're under your bed. You can hear the elephant trumpeting. You can hear the hippos munching, outside your tent. You can hear the owls whooping, the hyenas yipping, and you've got those wonderful bucket showers. So they fill it up with hot water. You pull a chain and the hot water comes over you under the stars, and it's just impossibly romantic. It's just amazing. It really is. It's a wonderful experience.
So is that where, as far as, let's talk about accommodations when you get there, most people stay in these tents or their hotels?
So I have like a formula, and my formula is for almost everybody. What we want to do is create a complete series of wows and contrasts. Mm-hmm. So you must contrast environments, wildlife, accommodations. And as we're coming through this COVID era, I'm seeing a strong movement to experiential travel. So people want to immerse themselves in culture and cuisine and history, and they want to understand the people as much as the wildlife. So I remember seeing in one of the And Beyond camps, in the guest book, someone had written, "We came for the wildlife, but it's the people that will bring us back."
Aww.
And I was so touched. So you've got to plan an itinerary where you have a series of wows. And that's where I loved you calling me a safari outfitter, because I see myself as a bit of a interior designer. You've got to sit down and you've got to understand your client. I've got a lady from Texas who travels with me every year in September for her birthday. She brings a group of friends, and she is mostly interested in the designs, the art, the people, the cuisine. She loves the good spas, a wonderful spa experience. She loves nothing more than to sit on her deck with a book in the afternoon, and she's been multiple times. So she's more interested in the experience. Animals are important, but the experience is much more important to her.
Okay.
And then I have others who say, I'm not interested in luxury. I don't want a Donna Karan glass capsule cut into granite rock, that's been magnificently crafted. That's not what I'm looking for. Whereas a lot of people would say, if you can give me that and then somewhere else put me in a tent, that's what I...
Yeah, right. A little bit of both,
that's
right?
What I'm after. So what you're really looking for is, I think, a combination for all age groups of a little dazzle, whether it is your traditional white damask, silver service, cut crystal, as you imagine safaris in the 1930s when the Baby Grand was playing and everyone wore black tie to dinner, some of that. And then some of the more, as I say, experiential. I'm a great fan of Wilderness Safari's Rukomachi camp in Zimbabwe. So this is in Mana Pools, which is a World Heritage Site. It's on the Zambezi River, the mighty Zambezi, which is the fourth longest river in Africa, fourth most significant river in Africa. And it borders Zimbabwe and Zambia. And what I love about Rukomachi is, I'm 62, so I like my comfort, Madison. I've had many of being, I like my comfort, but I can go to bed in a king-sized bed with magnificent linen, and the pillows are perfect. There's loads of hot water. I've got a flushing toilet, but I'm in a tent. And so I've got all that I just described to you, the wildlife, the noises, the night sounds, the excitement, the incredible excitement that I still feel after all these years of going to sleep in a tent in Africa at night. But I can choose between game drives in an open 4x4 vehicle, so you feel incredibly connected to nature. There's no barriers between you and what's there. You're connected. If we see a pride of lion 50 yards off the road, we're on private land. And I think it's very important to book a safari where you're on private land. I don't like driving with 22 other vehicles in the same area. I want to drive on private land when I'll never see more than 2 other vehicles. And most of the time I'm going to be on my own. So private land is really important. And safari is expensive anyway. Safari's always been a rich man's pursuit. Hunting was a rich man's pursuit. Safari is expensive. And it's expensive because of the infrastructure that's required. If you're in Botswana's Okavango Delta, for example, which is the largest inland delta in the world, 22,000 square kilometers, the only way in is by light aircraft. So by virtue of the fact that the only way in to this pristine, one of the ultimate wilderness areas of the world, it is one of the ultimate wilderness areas of the world because you can only get there by light aircraft. So there's very few people. And it's an Eden for wildlife of just perfect circumstances. Food, enough water, no pollution, no people, no industry.
Wow.
The stars to behold. And that's what you're paying for. The food has to be flown in. The only way in is by light aircraft.
Wow.
So naturally, these sort of experiences are your bucket list item. This is the trip of a lifetime. People describe it as the trip of a lifetime.
Sounds like I'm putting it on my bucket list. So what are we talking about ballpark figure cost for that type of the ultimate?
Very good question. So entry level, larger groups, probably not on private land, not my speciality. And for people who contact me with a budget of, say, $3,000 to $8,000 per person, I would say, I'm going to put you on to somebody who, that's what they do. They bulk buy, they guarantee so many beds per year, and they have scheduled departures, and they will handle that best for you. My personal genre is from sort of 10,000 per person up, and the up can be any level. We have private Gulf streams flying out of Teterboro in New York, directly to Africa. So you can go anywhere from 10 to goodness knows what.
Yeah.
Anywhere. But we can put together a wonderful itinerary that would encapsulate one of the high-end private reserves in South Africa, adjacent to the Kruger Park. And there are some beautiful, beautiful reserves that will cater for everybody's tastes, whether you like contemporary or traditional or more earthy or tented or whatever it is. There's something there for everybody and a price point for everybody.
Okay.
Victoria Falls, which I know for most people who are coming to Africa for the first time, they want to see the Victoria Falls, the largest curtain of water in the world.
Wow.
330 feet, a mile wide, twice as high, twice as wide as Niagara. They want to see it, and it's not just a curtain of falling water. There's history, there's people, there's rural visits, there's interaction, there's foundation work. I'll get back to that in a moment. So people want to see the falls. And then you throw in, I was telling you about Rukomachi, game drives, canoe safaris on the Zambezi, fishing, walking, boating. It's a multi-experiential camp. So, something like that over 10 days. And I do feel if you're coming all the way to Africa, you don't want to do it for less than 10 days. You're going to feel cheated. It's a big journey and it's a big expense. So not less than 10 days. And I'm of the feeling, after many years' experience, that 12 to 14 days is about right.
Okay.
So you want to leave before the party's over. I think, it's always nice to go out for dinner and then leave before the party's over, thinking I could have had a bit more, I was having fun. When you get to 3 weeks, I think anyone at the end of 3 weeks is generally ready to go home.
Right.
And I think it's nicer to before you get to that point. I always remember being on a Crystal World cruise, and I met Lady Weinstock, whose husband, Lord Weinstock, was the chairman of General Electric. And I said to her, Lady Weinstock, why are you doing just 50 days of the world cruise? And she said to me, my dear boy, because after 50 days, you start complaining about things about which you should not be complaining. It's time to go home. And I've always remembered that. You want to go home before the party's over. So if you're asking me what's the right time scale, I say 10 to 14 days is about right.
Okay. And now let's talk about the food.
And the food. So in the post-COVID era, Madison, I firmly believe that the market is drifting towards the more immersive travel. So I don't think people are going to want to come to Africa and eat what they eat at home.
No.
I think they want to know that they can, if that's their choice.
Right.
Also want to have options, and they want to immerse themselves in local cuisine and culture. And I think this is going to become even more important. And I'm seeing a lot of lodges now paying attention. 3 things have changed dramatically recently. Wi-Fi. So until very recently, you could go to a number of camps where you were cut off. And there was always this raging debate about whether you cut people off at the knees and make them experience the very best that Africa has to offer without distraction, or you need to be connected to the world. And I was always of a very strong opinion that you need to be connected. And that's where the market has gone. So it's actually now quite difficult to come to Africa and go somewhere where you're not connected. And I don't know about you, but when I'm on vacation, I quite like to spend an hour in the morning, catch up, and then turn my phone off, put it away, and I'm not going home to 1,000 emails. I can't stand that.
Yeah.
So I quite like being connected. So Wi-Fi's happened. Food, much more interesting. So ranging from Swalu Kalahari in South Africa, which is owned by the Oppenheimer family, the South African Oppenheimer family. The word Swalu means a new beginning. So they took 200,000 hectares of land that was farmland, and they turned the clock back 200 years to how it used to be, reintroduced all the wildlife. And it's really the most fabulous destination in the Northern Cape in South Africa, near the Kimberley diamond mines.
Okay.
But my point is, they have very cleverly the first South African to earn a Michelin star in Nice is a chap by the name of Jan Hendrik van der Westhuizen. And he's opened a restaurant at Swale. So you can stay in this wildlife preserve and you can eat the wonderful Relais Chateau food that they have in the lodge, but you can also go out to dinner to the restaurant of South Africa's first Michelin-starred chef, and focus on South African cuisine. So it ranges from that to coming to Victoria Falls and having my staff prepare traditional, what we call sadza, which is a type of grits, a stew, and our kale peanut butter mix, which is the staple food here in Zimbabwe. You've got that enormous range of what's available. That is an enhancement to anybody's safari. But I think it's very important for people to know, because obviously it's the unknown. And I know when I first went to China in 1984, I was absolutely petrified because I'm a boring eater. I'm not adventurous. And people come to Africa and they are concerned. And what I would say to them is, don't be. You're going to have an array of delicious food, organic, freshly prepared, loads of fruit and vegetables that are perfectly safe to eat. Wonderful proteins, interesting deviations to things that like grits, which we actually produce, a maize meal porridge that we eat with beef. There's just so much that's there for you if you're willing to try. And if you're not try, you're going to have delicious food anyway. Whether it's haute cuisine at a very luxurious lodge, or whether it's mother's homemade food at a family lodge, it's all going to be good, I promise you.
Yeah, I mean, it just sounds amazing. I'm looking forward to booking my first trip there, hopefully very, very soon.
Madison, just off on a tangent for a moment before I forget, I wanted to talk to you a little bit about foundations in Africa. So, more and more, again, in the post-COVID world, it was already fashionable before, but more and more people are saying to me now, we want to come and we want to make a difference. We don't just want to be thrilled by the sense of fascination for this wild and complex continent. We want to give back.
Okay.
And first thing I say to people is that every safari is a vacation that's giving back, because you're helping to preserve parts of this planet that are as they are meant to be.
Yes.
So every single safari is going to preserve parts of our planet in a true wilderness, which is just so important. It's becoming more and more important as time goes by. But there are others who say, I want to come and I want to work in a foundation. I want to spend a day or a morning or 2 days or a week working with the foundation, and I want to make a difference. And there are so many opportunities for people in Africa, whether your interest is wildlife, or whether your interest is people, or art, or whatever it might be. There's just so many ways that you can come and make a difference. And I'm going to give our own foundation in Victoria Falls a little punt here. It's called the Jefuta Foundation. It's named after one of the seniors of the tribe going back a couple of 100 years in this area where I actually live. His name was Jefuta. And it was started by one of my oldest and most darling friends, who's frightfully good at giving her husband's money away.
Yeah.
And they actually meet all the running costs of this foundation. So every donation they take is, 100% goes to where it's meant to go.
Yeah.
And we started off when Gail started it, it was very much human-wildlife conflict. So what we wanted to achieve was to stop the wildlife coming into the town of Victoria Falls, because there are no fences, there's nothing to stop them. And then, you had human-wildlife conflict. So what we wanted to do was establish water points around the town so that it would keep the animals away from the river and away from the town and away from the people.
Okay.
And that's this whole sort of concept was born. And I made some notes earlier this evening before we spoke. I mean, it's just extraordinary what they're now doing.
Wow.
On from human-wildlife conflict to biogas. So that's where we put human waste into a machine that, animal waste, I beg your pardon, into a machine that produces a flame. So people can use that flame to cook or to study at night. They're not going to chop down trees to make a fire to cook with or to be warm or to produce light.
Wow.
Girls' feminine dignity. So schoolgirls, they produce reusable materials that the schoolgirls don't miss a week of school every month.
Mm-hmm.
Been amazing. Solar study lights, putting down wells to provide rural people with water, which is life.
Mm-hmm.
Vegetable gardens, feed yourself, feed your community program.
Wow.
And the latest is a women's empowerment center. So I think this is very exciting because I believe the future of shopping whilst on safari is going to move away from those sort of luxury emporiums to what can I do to uplift people. And so
Yes.
with a women's empowerment center, which they're building just out of town, and they're going to have a shop in Victoria Falls where, the goods will come, the merchandise will come from the Women's Empowerment Center. I'm speaking from the heart because it's something that I'm connected and I'm close to my heart. But there are many, many such initiatives wherever you might be in Africa. I was in Tanzania recently, and that's where we got the idea of the Women's Empowerment Center, because we went to a Maasai village. We were at Klein's Camp in the north of the Serengeti, another and beyond property. And they took us for this amazing day to a Maasai village. And one of the projects we looked at was this Women's Empowerment Center, and
Wow.
with a client of mine, and we were absolutely enchanted and transfixed. And she came back and said, I'm going to fund one of these in Victoria Falls. And so off we go. But
awesome.
my point, as I made in the beginning of this, off on a tangent, as you can see in the last hour, I like to talk.
Okay.
I get sidelined very easily, but these projects are very important, and I think in a post-COVID world, going to become more and more desirous. I think people will come to Africa and say, I want to see the wildlife, but I also want to give.
Yeah.
And I say to anybody who books a safari with me, you're giving back big time.
Yeah, it's true, right? And you're
Big
right.
time.
As we kind of talked about at the beginning, is that COVID's changed a lot of things, and hopefully our mindsets for the better of what's really important. So not just going and having shopping and shopping and shopping. It's more about the experience, and then what you can embracing other cultures and learning about other cultures and foods, and just really experiencing that and then giving back. And I think that's a great thing to do. while you're there?
At the beginning of COVID, Madison, sorry, I'm interrupting you. Beginning of COVID, I said to my partner, at the end of this storm, it's either going to be a kinder world or a more selfish world. And
yeah, we didn't know.
I'm pleased to say, from what I'm observing, we are probably halfway through this dreadful storm. I'm seeing a kinder world, and it warms my heart.
Yes, totally. So is Africa fully open? Can people book trips? Like what's the status currently right now?
So Madison, fascinating. I was looking at statistics yesterday, actually. Asia, Australasia, about 2%. It's back to about 2%. Mm-hmm. South America, 18%. Europe, about 42%.
Okay.
Africa, about 30%. North America and Caribbean, around 82%. So Americans are traveling, and Americans are mostly traveling at home or close by. At the moment, to be perfectly honest, my perception is it's only the ultra wealthy and mavericks who are traveling. So our neighbors are perfect examples. Gail and Kevin, put them on a plane tomorrow, anywhere in the world, they'll say, let's go.
Yeah.
My partner and I are a lot more cautious, and I'm thinking about what happens if regulations change and I can't move around, I can't get back, I can't do. That's my nature. So, you're one or the other. It's black or white in this environment. And we are seeing people who are saying, I'm vaccinated. We know that the Pfizer, Moderna, Johnson & Johnson vaccines are 90+% efficient against all current known variants.
Okay.
So if you've had a vaccination, as I have, I'm willing to travel because I feel that I'm protected. I'm going to be respectful when I'm there, and I'm going to wear a mask indoors because I don't know who's been vaccinated and who hasn't. Outdoors, I'm fine. So on safari at the moment, most of your safari is outdoors, and people generally don't wear masks. The staff will wear masks out of respect to you, but people generally don't. And most of the world is open. The United States government has made its position very clear. If you're vaccinated, there will be no quarantine. We're not closing borders, go travel. And people are traveling.
Yeah, so nice to see, isn't it?
Yeah, we've had, multiple groups since March this year. We've traveled to multiple countries, and I'm saying to people at the moment, understand it's not without risk. You can be vaccinated and still test positive somewhere, and I'm afraid then you're not moving on to the next country. So there are risks associated, but I believe these risks can be managed.
So do you think by like the fall, or September, October, the fall for America, that it'll be more back to normal, like where people aren't, right? Because when I go to Africa, I want to see people's faces. I don't want to see any mask. I don't want to have any restrictions. So I would wait for me, because the most beautiful thing somebody wears is your smile. And I don't want to see a mask covering that. I don't want to see a mask anywhere in sight. So that's when I want to go.
Yeah, you're going to need to wait. And in a discussion that we would have, and I would say to you, you are going to see masks. And if you don't want to see masks, I think you should wait. Vaccination programs are rolling out very well. So Zimbabwe and Rwanda and Mauritius, for example, the vaccination program is quite advanced. And so here in Victoria Falls, we don't see a lot of masks because we vaccinated. Rwanda, much the same. Rwanda's had a very efficient vaccination program. So at the moment, I would say to you, we need to choose your countries. quite carefully if that's one of your criteria.
So
And
do you think if I did something like in the fall or like September, October, that it'd be more back to what it used to be, or still
no,
wait
that's
a
too
little
soon.
while?
Too soon,
Okay.
Madison. Yeah, too soon.
So probably in the next year.
wish I could look you. I wish I could look you in the eye and say, "Come in September," and many people in the industry are going to be horrified I'm saying this, but if that's your criteria, and my job is to be honest and match criteria, and if that is one of them, I would say it's too soon. You must wait for next year.
Yes. Okay. But at least we're heading in the right direction.
Definitely.
It's
There's
just,
no question.
oh,
We're moving forward. And even in Africa, where resources are not like they are in the first world, financial resources are not as strong as they are. Even in Africa, we're starting to see now effective rollout, and things are definitely getting better.
okay. Well, that's good. I think we're only getting better from here, which is good. And yeah, I think that the travel industry is going to be, I think we're going to see more travel. We're going to see more travel shows. I think that it's going to be just something where, as I said at the beginning, that you value what's important after having so many things we took for granted taken away. And so I'm excited. I know I want to do much more traveling. Africa's done.
Absolutely. I mean, I feel like I'm in a war. I spoke to you right at the beginning of our chat about my father fighting in the Second World War, and I feel that this is a war against an invisible enemy.
Yeah.
But I can't do what I want to do. I want to go to London and hug my nephew, and I can't. And so it is almost like fighting a war. And can you imagine what it must have been like for 5 years of not being able to do what you want? And I think when this is over, we're all going to be so much more grateful for those little things that we took so much for granted.
I know that I'll never complain about a crowded bar again. This place is too crowded. I'm like, that's where I'm going. I want to go where people are running into me.
I want to be crowded.
I know.
I want to be, exactly.
Or people like bumping into you. I'll be like, no, please touch me. You can touch me.
Absolutely.
Anywhere but my friend, unless you are really handsome.
That has been the worst thing for me. I'm a huggy, touchy.
Me too.
I love people. I love you, and I want to hug you, and it's just been so difficult.
I know. But we're almost through it, and
we're moving exceptionally well, and
so
amazingly grateful.
Yes. Before we wrap up, tell people where they can find you, so they can inquire about more information or book a safari.
That is so kind of you. Thank you.
Of course.
We are on the web as TMAC, Tango Mike Alpha Charlie, .mu, Mike Uniform. So tmac.mu is our website. It stands for the Malcolm Ainscough Collection, which is a collection of the finest travel professionals available in Africa, the finest guides, the finest pilot guides, and we only book with the finest operators. So I like to think as a collection.
Yes. Okay, perfect. And you guys, all this information will be on the website under the episode on nexttomadison.com. So you can go ahead and locate it there. So, well, thank you so much for taking the time out of your evening where you are and sharing with us the amazing things that Africa has to offer. And I'm sure a lot of listeners like myself are very excited to get there, and maybe you'll be seeing some familiar faces from the podcast soon. And
I'm sorry I did most of the talking.
I wanted to know about Africa. I'm not the Africa expert, so you had to do most of the talking because I don't know it. I haven't been there yet. So this was amazing, and I'm so excited to finally be able to book my trip in the future. So, well, thank you so much, and everybody that's listening, wherever you may be, at the gym, in the car, at home, on a walk, whatever you're doing, I appreciate you very much for tuning into another episode of Next to Madison, and we'll see you next time to find out who's next.
Hey, your host here, Madison Malloy. Please make sure to subscribe to the show on all podcast platforms, and please rate and review us on iTunes and Spotify. Also, if you have any questions or comments, you can email us at contact@next2madison.com. I thank you again for listening. Bye.